And it just, I think, was out of its time. I think that someday it will come in, like it took a while for The Wizard of Oz to come into style. They thought they had a turkey when that came out.
Behind one of the most iconic horror films in cinematic history lies a story of relentless pressure, psychological breaking points, and tears that weren't just for the camera. When Shelley Duvall swung that baseball bat at Jack Nicholson in The Shining, her terror felt agonizingly real, and for good reason. Stanley Kubrick, the film's perfection-obsessed director, pushed her through an exhausting 127 takes of that single scene. By the end, her hands were trembling, her voice hoarse from screaming, and her mind overwhelmed from the grind of months spent living inside Wendy Torrance's fragile psyche. But what really happened on that set? Was it a genius director pulling an extraordinary performance from his actress, or a case of cruelty in the name of art? Shelley Duvall's descent into this role and the aftermath that followed reveal a darker side of Hollywood's pursuit of perfection, and it's a side that's hard to ignore. Before she became Wendy Torrance, Shelley Duvall was Hollywood's definition of unconventional brilliance. Her journey to acting wasn't carefully planned, it was almost accidental. Born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1949, Duvall originally studied nutrition and worked as a cosmetic saleswoman. Her discovery came when Robert Altman, one of Hollywood's cutting-edge directors, spotted her at a party in Houston. Struck by her distinct look, wide, expressive eyes, delicate frame, and striking charisma, Altman cast her in his film Brewster McCloud from 1970. This debut launched her career, but Shelley wasn't like most actresses of her time. In an era dominated by glamorous starlets, her naturalistic approach to acting and unique appearance made her unforgettable. Audiences were captivated by her in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971, and Thieves Like Us in 1974. But it was Altman's Three Women from 1977 that marked her breakthrough moment. Her haunting performance as Millie Lamoureux, an isolated, overly cheerful woman whose insecurities simmer beneath the surface, earned her critical acclaim and the Best Actress award at the Cannes Film Festival. What set Shelley apart wasn't just her distinct acting style. It was her ability to channel vulnerability and fragility into roles that felt alive. By the mid-1970s, she had cemented herself as a unique talent in Hollywood, starring in hits like Nashville from 1975 and creating avant-garde television projects like Fairy Tale Theater, which she hosted and produced. Her creative instincts and willingness to take on emotionally demanding roles drew directors like Stanley Kubrick to her. But The Shining was different. Shelley wasn't just playing a character. Wendy Torrance's emotional spiral would soon mirror her own. Kubrick reportedly wanted someone who could embody genuine vulnerability and frailty, and Shelley's history of portraying emotionally nuanced characters seemed perfect. Yet she couldn't have imagined just how dark this role would become, both on and off the screen. For Shelley Duvall, The Shining wasn't just another opportunity, it would define her legacy, but at an unimaginable cost. When Stanley Kubrick cast Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance in The Shining, he had a specific vision in mind. Unlike the character in Stephen King's original novel, Wendy Torrance in Kubrick's interpretation wasn't a traditionally strong, resilient mother protecting her child. Instead, Kubrick reshaped her into a meek, fragile, and emotionally vulnerable woman, someone who could crumble against Jack's unrelenting descent into madness. Shelley, with her unique emotional expressiveness and sensitivity, seemed to fit that mold perfectly. Yet Shelley Duvall wasn't Kubrick's first choice. Initially, actresses like Jessica Lange and Meryl Streep were considered, both seen as more conventional fits for Hollywood's idea of a leading woman. Critics at the time even questioned Shelley's suitability for such a harrowing role. She lacked the classical beauty or screen presence associated with typical horror heroines, something that worked against her in the public's eye but made her perfect for Kubrick's vision. Her waif-like physique, expressive eyes, and soft demeanor brought a level of humanity to Wendy Torrance that no other actress could. Shelley herself hesitated before accepting the part. She was no stranger to challenging roles, often playing characters teetering on the edge of emotional instability, but The Shining was something entirely different. The role required her to endure extreme, often relentless emotional distress. Duvall later admitted the script gave her anxiety from the start, and working under Kubrick's notoriously aggressive direction only deepened her concerns. Still, her commitment to her craft and eagerness to prove herself outweighed her fears. She went into the production determined to make Wendy Torrance feel real, even if that meant going to uncomfortable lengths. One peculiar element of her casting was Kubrick's fixation on vulnerability. Kubrick believed Shelley's natural softness and fragility could be molded on screen to make audiences genuinely feel Wendy's fear. What he didn't realize, or perhaps didn't care about, was that those same qualities left her vulnerable in real life, making what she endured on set all the more harrowing. At the time, Kubrick spoke highly of her unique talent, but as filming began, it became clear that Shelley's emotional authenticity would come at a devastating price. Few sets are as infamous as The Shining, and Shelley Duvall endured the brunt of its horrors. From the beginning of production, Stanley Kubrick's obsessive perfectionism set an oppressive tone. He meticulously controlled every aspect of filming, from camera angles to performance details, demanding take after take until every expression, every movement was exactly how he envisioned it. While Jack Nicholson reportedly thrived under Kubrick's rigorous direction, Shelley suffered deeply. Kubrick's peculiar approach to directing Shelley was interpreted by many as deliberate psychological manipulation. He often isolated her from the rest of the cast and crew, ensuring she felt the same loneliness and alienation as Wendy Torrance. Actor Scatman Crothers, who played Dick Halloran, once broke down in tears after filming 60 takes of one scene. But Shelley faced even worse. She later described the 9-month shoot as almost unbearable, likening it to a marathon of emotional torture. Beyond the infamous baseball bat scene, more on that later, smaller moments of cruelty piled up. Kubrick would belittle Shelley's performance in front of others, calling her weak or helpless, stripping her of confidence. He intentionally withheld praise, believing her fear and insecurity would translate into a more authentic performance. Co-star Jack Nicholson later admitted he felt Kubrick was unnecessarily hard on Shelley, commenting that she was often completely worn out by the end of filming days. One little-known fact is the toll this took on her body. Shelley experienced physical symptoms from the stress, including hair loss and frequent bouts of dehydration. She was expected to cry on command for months, leading to extreme exhaustion. Shelley kept a bottle of water with her at all times. Crying nonstop under the hot set lights left her body drained, both of energy and moisture. For Shelley, The Shining wasn't just acting, it became a relentless battle for her emotional and physical survival. The tension in the staircase scene where Wendy Torrance fends off Jack's madness with a baseball bat is palpable, but what happened behind the camera was far more unsettling. While often noted for taking 127 attempts, what's lesser known is the sheer duration of that day. Shelley Duvall was trapped on set for over 12 intense hours, cycling through fear, exhaustion, and hysteria in an endless loop. Kubrick's demand for perfection stretched far beyond a simple retake. He scrutinized every micro-expression, every screamed word. By the time the day ended, Shelley's physical state reflected the trauma of having lived through that fear in real time. Her palms were blistered from clutching the bat too tightly for such a prolonged period. Her knees buckled repeatedly after stumbling backward up the stairs. Take after take, a motion she'd been forced to redo until her legs shook beneath her. At one point, doctors had to be called in after she hyperventilated, unable to catch her breath during a break in filming. Kubrick wasn't just chasing aesthetic perfection. He was attempting to make Shelley fully embody Wendy Torrance's emotional collapse. To intensify her vulnerability, he reportedly had her rewatch playback of previous takes, repeatedly pointing out what he felt were weak moments. This approach wasn't standard direction, but a deliberate method designed to break her emotionally, leaving her trapped in Wendy's fragile mindset. What many don't realize is how much of this scene's brutality extended to her co-star, Jack Nicholson. While less affected by Kubrick's methods, Nicholson began adapting his own performance to match Shelley's crumbling emotional state. Off-camera, he later admitted to growing protective of her, occasionally intervening when Kubrick's treatment became excessive. Yet even Nicholson, known for his resilience, was disturbed by how incessantly Duvall was pushed. When Kubrick finally called cut on the final take, Shelley dropped the bat and broke into uncontrollable sobs. That harrowing breakdown remains imprinted in each frame of the finished scene. The visceral, raw terror burned into her expressions became immortalized in cinematic history, but the scars Shelley carried after that day lasted far longer. For Kubrick, the scene was a masterpiece. For Shelley, it was a piece of herself she'd never truly get back. When the camera stopped rolling on The Shining, Shelley Duvall didn't simply walk away unscathed. The psychological toll of the role lingered long after the production wrapped. During the 9-month shoot, Duvall had pushed herself to emotional and physical extremes, and the experience altered her both professionally and personally. Wendy Torrance, with all her fear, desperation, and exhaustion, may have stayed confined to the screen, but for Shelley, the strain was all too real. One of the most haunting details about the aftermath was Shelley's declining physical health. The stress she'd endured, pairing constant high-energy performances with Kubrick's relentless demands, had left her immune system weakened. Not only did she experience extreme weight loss during the shoot, but Duvall also complained of chronic fatigue following production, which reportedly disrupted her ability to take on new projects. On top of that, she suffered from hair loss so severe that she feared it would affect future roles. Emotionally, the experience left Shelley in a perpetual state of unease. She later admitted in interviews that Kubrick's treatment made her feel alienated during filming, and the breakdown scenes had caused her to dip into psychological depths she wasn't prepared to explore. It wasn't just work, she later reflected, it was real-life trauma. Though she never openly condemned Kubrick's methods, her candid recollections of the set paint a picture of an actress emotionally isolated and mentally battered in service of art. Professionally, The Shining became both a defining and limiting mark on her career. The performance, lauded for its raw emotion and vulnerability, earned her widespread recognition. However, the Hollywood machine and Kubrick's domination of the narrative surrounding the film led to exaggerated perceptions of Duvall's role in its success. Critics initially underrated her, often focusing more on Nicholson's commanding performance or Kubrick's direction. Shelley's contribution, her ability to channel the terror that anchored the film's most gripping scenes, was unfairly overshadowed. She wasn't nominated for any major awards, despite her Herculean effort. The aftermath of Wendy Torrance stayed with her for years. Shelley began retreating from the industry, turning to smaller projects and eventually withdrawing from the spotlight altogether. While Kubrick hailed Wendy's character transformation as a triumph, Shelley herself would carry the scars of that transformation far beyond the set of The Shining. For her, the curtain closing on Wendy marked the beginning of her own private struggles. After The Shining, Shelley Duvall's career and personal life took a sharp turn. While the film solidified her presence in cinematic history, her experience on set fundamentally changed how she viewed Hollywood and her place within it. Following the intense emotional strain, Shelley gradually distanced herself from high-profile projects. Instead of leveraging her success for more blockbuster roles, she transitioned to smaller, more artistic ventures, prioritizing peace over the chaos of major productions. In the years following The Shining, Shelley focused on projects where she could exert more creative control. One of her most notable contributions came in her role as the creator and producer of Fairy Tale Theater, an anthology series that adapted classic fairy tales with Hollywood stars. The lighthearted nature of the show was a significant departure from the dark, emotionally fraught roles she had spent years performing. She co-starred in several episodes, picking whimsical parts that allowed her to reconnect with the joy of acting. These productions contrasted sharply with not only The Shining, but also her previous work in more melancholic dramas. As time went on, Shelley's retreat from Hollywood grew more pronounced. By the early 2000s, she had largely vanished from the public eye. Her reclusive lifestyle fueled countless rumors, with some speculating she had deliberately turned her back on the industry because of the emotional damage it had inflicted, an idea supported by her openness about the psychological toll that heavy roles like Wendy Torrance had taken. In 2016, Shelley briefly re-emerged with a deeply concerning public appearance during an interview on Dr. Phil. It shocked fans and colleagues alike, showcasing her struggles with physical and mental health. Shelley's friends, including filmmaker Lee Unkrich, who had been writing a book about The Shining, criticized the show for exploiting her condition rather than helping her. In the wake of the backlash, advocates in the industry began calling attention to the mental health challenges many performers face behind the scenes, using Shelley's story as a cautionary tale. Despite her difficulties, Shelley remains a beloved figure and is now viewed by many as a symbol of resilience amidst the pressures of Hollywood. Her legacy as Wendy Torrance stands as a testament to her courage, but her later years highlight the dangerous psychological effects filmmaking can impose. For many fans, Shelley Duvall's journey is both a powerful reminder of her talent and a cautionary tale of what happens when human vulnerability is tested to its extremes. The legacy of The Shining is undeniable. It is widely regarded as one of the greatest horror films of all time, a chilling masterpiece immortalized by Stanley Kubrick's vision, Jack Nicholson's madness, and Shelley Duvall's vulnerability. But the film's brilliance came at a devastating cost, one that raises an uncomfortable question: how far is too far in the name of art? In more recent years, modern filmmakers, actors, and critics have revisited the behind-the-scenes accounts of The Shining, prompting a re-evaluation of Kubrick's methods. While Kubrick is often celebrated for his genius and uncompromising pursuit of cinematic perfection, Shelley Duvall's experience has now become a central part of that conversation. Her treatment on set represents a darker side of Hollywood, where the emotional and psychological well-being of actors is sometimes sacrificed for a director's creative ambitions. What makes Shelley's story especially poignant is the way it sheds light on the broader struggles of performers pushed to their limits. She has become a symbol of resilience in the wake of adversity, a reminder that artists are people, not tools to be manipulated. Her later struggles with mental health have also sparked important discussions about the responsibility of directors to balance artistic ambition with humane treatment of their cast and crew. In the aftermath of her retreat from Hollywood, Shelley's contributions to cinema have been celebrated with a newfound appreciation. Fans and critics alike continue to view her performance as Wendy Torrance as not just a standout in horror history, but an act of unparalleled courage. Do you think Stanley Kubrick went too far in pushing Shelley Duvall for her role in The Shining, or was it a necessary sacrifice for a cinematic masterpiece? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.